The morning my wife's father mopped the marble floor of the company lobby, he nodded politely to me as if I were just another ordinary employee. The bucket of gray water beside him reflected the golden letters on the wall, the name of the company he worked for every day. What he didn't know, what my wife didn't know, was that the name on that wall was mine. The empire they believed belonged to distant executives and untouchable billionaires was actually built by the quiet man who shared their dinner table every Sunday. Before we step into this story, take a second to support the channel. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like this video, share it with someone who needs inspiration, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. My name is Arvind Kale, though inside the company most people simply knew me as Mr. AK. The mystery owner who rarely appeared in public. I built the company from a cramped rented room 10 years ago with nothing but sleepless nights and a stubborn refusal to give up. Back then I had no money, no connections, and no one who believed the business would survive its first year. But failure slowly turned into survival, survival turned into growth, and before I realized it, the small idea had grown into a nationwide corporation with thousands of employees. Yet despite everything I had built, the most important truth of my life remained hidden. I never told my wife, Mira, that I owned it all. When Mira and I first met, she worked as a receptionist in a small clinic. She laughed easily, cared deeply, and treated everyone with the same warmth whether they were rich or poor. I had already begun building the company at that time, but it was still fragile. I told her I worked in corporate administration, which wasn't entirely a lie. I simply never explained that I was the one making the decisions. The reason I kept quiet was simple and painful. My entire life I had seen how money changes people. Friends suddenly become polite. Family members become calculating. Even love can start to feel like a transaction. When I met Mira, I wanted something real, something untouched by the weight of wealth. And so I stayed silent. A year later, we married in a modest ceremony under a bright afternoon sun. Her father, Hariram attended wearing a neatly pressed but old shirt. He was a proud man who had worked hard his entire life doing maintenance jobs in different buildings. He never complained about the long hours or the aching knees. All he cared about was providing for his daughter. After the wedding, when he heard that a large corporation was hiring maintenance workers, he applied immediately. He was proud when he got the job. The corporation was mine. Every morning, Hariram woke up before sunrise, packed his lunch in a small steel container, and took the bus across town to the headquarters building. I often arrived quietly later in the day through a private entrance, but sometimes our paths crossed in the lobby. He always greeted me politely. Not as his son-in-law. Not as the owner. Just another employee walking past a man holding a mop. Those moments twisted my heart in ways I could never fully explain. Hariram worked harder than anyone else in the building. Even the supervisors noticed. When younger workers tried to skip tasks, he quietly finished them without complaint. When someone dropped coffee on the polished floors, he cleaned it without irritation. There was dignity in his work that many executives upstairs lacked. But one afternoon, something happened that changed everything. I was reviewing reports in my office when I overheard two middle managers laughing near the hallway. They didn't know I was behind the partially closed door. They were mocking Hariram. They joked about his age, his slow walk, and how he still carried a lunchbox like a poor villager. Their laughter echoed down the corridor like broken glass. In that moment, something inside me burned. Not because they insulted a worker, but because they insulted my family. For years I had kept my identity hidden to protect the purity of my marriage. I wanted Mira to love me for who I was, not what I owned. But now my silence was allowing people to treat her father with disrespect. That evening, I drove home slowly under the fading daylight. The city glowed in warm orange hues, and children played cricket in dusty streets. Ordinary life moved peacefully around me while my mind wrestled with a truth I had buried for years. When I reached home, Mira was watering plants on the balcony. The sunlight wrapped around her hair like gold. She smiled the same way she always had since the day we met. For a moment, I almost told her everything. But fear stopped me. Not fear of losing her love. Fear of changing it. Days passed. Then weeks. But the memory of that laughter in the hallway refused to fade. One morning, the company organized a major event celebrating its 10th anniversary. Hundreds of employees gathered in the main hall while cameras recorded the ceremony. Most of them had never seen the real owner before. Including Hariram. When the time came for the founder to step on stage, whispers spread through the crowd. I walked out under the bright lights. Gasps filled the hall like a sudden storm of air leaving 1,000 lungs. Hariram stood frozen near the back of the room, his mop still in his hand. Mira, who had come to watch the celebration, stared at me as if the world had suddenly turned upside down. The speech I gave that day was not about profits or growth. It was about dignity. I spoke about the janitors who keep buildings clean before executives arrive. I spoke about workers whose names never appear in reports but whose effort keeps the company alive. And then I spoke about a man who wakes up every morning before dawn and works with quiet pride, believing he is just another invisible employee. The entire hall turned as I walked toward the back. When I reached Hariram, I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. The cameras captured the tears in his eyes. That was the moment everyone finally understood the truth. Later that evening, Mira and I sat together in silence at home. The sunset painted the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. She didn't speak for a long time. When she finally looked at me, there was no anger in her eyes. Only understanding. Sometimes love is not about grand gestures or powerful titles. Sometimes it is about protecting the sincerity of a relationship, even if it means carrying a secret for years. But that day I learned something important. Respect should never stay hidden. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Kindness Journal so more stories like this can reach people around the world. And before we end, here's a special request. Comment the word respect if you believe every hardworking person deserves dignity no matter their job. Because in the end, empires are not built by one man. They are built by the quiet strength of people like Hariram, who show up every day, work with pride, and remind us that true success is measured not by wealth, but by how we treat those who stand beside us.